Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this special webinar about the QF Test UI Inspector. This is QF Test, as you all know and love it. By the way, it's version 7.1.3, which will hopefully be released in the next couple of days. So some of the functionality you see is available only there, but I will point it out. Most of the functionality, which I present to you now, is already available in the QF Test you have installed on your system, given that you have a current QF Test installed. So let's get started. Why UI Inspector? Why QF Test UI Inspector? Let's see a little example from the website to get you motivated. So this you all know, this is our web demo suite. I just started a little web application which we can run and test. Usually it gets started with Chrome. Yeah, it is. So this is the application under test, and this is QF Test. It's always a good idea to place them side by side. That makes things a little bit easier to interact. So let's say you want to design test, for example, elements in this application, and you want to design a custom web resolver or a standard resolver for this. I refer to my former special webinars where I talked about resolvers and scripting, so you can understand that the resolver is a way to tell QF Test how to watch at the application, in this case at the web application. So a tool most of you, if you're testing web applications, is using is the browser's web console and the web dev tools. Well, they take quite a bit of space, so I make it a little bit bigger here. So this is a view, a technical view on the web page, which is currently presented in the web browser. In this, you have at the left side here a hierarchical view of the content of the page. Let's say it's kind of an HTML view on the nodes, which are visible. And let's see, it starts here with, for example, an HTML tag, which is the mother tag of everything here. Then it has a lot of comment data. It has a head tag. It has in the head tag a lot of data like scripts and styling, which I'm not interested at the moment. It has some body tag here, again, some no script and some line break, whatever, and more script and more script and more script. I know you understand the game. It's like your application that you're testing, and somewhere down there is some elements you're interested. So normally you don't scroll like I'm doing at the moment, but you select, for example, this little inspector tool here to pick a component. Then you pick the component of the question, and then you get all the information you need to design your custom web resolver, which might be more than you really need. Like you have a class here and you have some style information. The class is really cool. That's like, can map it to a cell in a table, but the style information you don't really need here. And on the right side, you have more details like styles, for example. But what I'm missing here and what I don't know is what is QF Test really seeing? So I may have a resolver in it. What is the resolved name for this component? What are the extra features? What are the feature? What is the defined structure QF Test is using? All those questions are not answered by this table. So what do people normally do? Well, they say, well, let's get started. I just record this component for an instance. So I can see, okay, I have recorded the component. Let's see what it does. Now I have some component here. It's the HTML. I have to go inside there. It's a bit tricky. And now I have all the data here. So I can see here, this is the vehicle. This is the feature name. Or maybe I want to adapt the feature. So let's say, write a little script for that. Let's say I write an SAT script. I say I want to change my feature. So I select the feature resolver and I say, okay, I want to return the feature with some more elements. So something like this. And let's do this for all the elements. And so this is executed. I don't really know whether it worked or not. Maybe, well, let's say if there's any syntax error here inside, I would have seen, but I don't know whether the component now is updated or not. So I redo this. I click here. I select my table. I say stop recording. I get a new component. I see, okay, there's the feature has changed on all of those components. And yeah, here also is the feature vehicle table leaks. But it would be so cool to have that one visible here, like in the UI inspector of the DevTools, but like from the QF test side. And exactly this is what the UI inspector in QF test is all about. It's having the possibility to inspect your application like QF does it internally during the test. So first questions first, how do I open the UI inspector? And well, the answer is not a single answer. There's more than one way to do it. So let's see all the ways. Just close that for a moment so I have some space for the UI inspector. One way to do it is, let's say, simply select from the client's menu and then your client. And here is a little entry called Show Web UI Inspector. So I click on that. Wait a second. Now it retraces all the application. It rescans it, sees if anything has changed in the background. And then it opens the UI Inspector here. And you can see it's pretty similar to what we've seen before. You have a hierarchical structure of the nodes. They are not formatted HTML here because that would imply that QFTest has the same HTML view on it, but QFTest sees your application as a hierarchy of components, and therefore we've decided to show them here in a component view. So here you have the UI inspector. But as I said, that's not the only way to do it. Another option would be to select any object here from the Windows and Components part. You can here select Show in Inspector. And if you select Show in Inspector, it brings the inspector to the front and directly selects the component under question here. This also would work if you have like recorded an event. Let's record an event here. For example, click on that button. So this is the recorded event. And here as well, you can say Show in Inspector, click it, and it highlights the button in the inspector. If you design a custom web resolver, let's say I add a new custom web resolver here. Let's use the menu for this time. So I say something else and install custom web resolver. I have this inspector button over there on the right next to all the other buttons which help you design the custom web resolver. You can click it, and again, the inspector is brought to the front, and you see it here inside. You see the current view inside the UI inspector. Fifth way to open the inspector is when you're currently recording elements. So you're recording components here. You have components in view. You already know you can click now and right-click on the component to say, I want to component the component only. I want to record the component and the children. I want to record the whole window. I also have some helper functions, like I want to suggest a name for that component. I want to see all the methods which I can call from an SUT script on that method. And now there's a new, on the component, there's a new entry saying Show in Inspector, and you might have guessed already, it opens the inspector and selects the component there. So it's a really neat way to go to the UI inspector and select the element under question. the last way I will show you here is only available on Mac OS X. On Mac OS X, from next version on, you have a little icon for the helper program, which controls the web browser. It's called the QFTest Web Controller. And here you have a tools menu, and from the tools menu as well, you can select UI Inspector. And if you have as well here in the dock, found the QFTest Web Controller icon, just right-click on it, you select Tools, and select UI Inspector, and here it comes again. So that's about starting the UI Inspector. You should have found a way by now to get into it. But what do I see here? Well, first there are some symbol icons here where you can select different options. You can select actions, navigation actions, and you have this little pointer toolbar element where you can say, I want to select a component directly from my user interface. This is you may remember that from the DevTools. So again, here's the option. You select one of the elements. You see it by the nice blue highlight, for example, that one. And here you go. You have the element in question. In the upper side here, in this tree view, where you have the hierarchical view on your components. And then on the bottom, you have the detailed component information about the component you just selected. So there are 3 parts in that detail view. There's the general part. This general part is the same for all the elements you can click here. So not the same content, but the same content type. You have first the generic class. That is the class which is mapped either by a generic class resolver or your custom web resolver. So this is what the QFTest application sees the component as. So in fact, it sees a link here. This you can refer to as link when you create a smart ID or you create a new component. Then you have other classes. These come handy when you register new resolvers for a subset of classes, which is not directly linked, but for example, all components or all smart components. Here you can get the other information. You can see the size and the location of the element. And yeah, that's it, by the way. The size, by the way, you can also see here directly in the inspector tree view, as long as you have selected the corresponding option here. So show geometry in tree. You find this as well in the menu, show geometry. With that, you can then enable and disable the geometry. The third part here is also the same, has also the same entries for all the components. It contains a proposal about a smart ID to use. It contains the name and the structure and the feature information about the component, and it contains the value, the current value of all the extra features. You might remember this. It looks pretty much like what we have here in the vehicle table, for example, this information, but it's dynamic. So you have it here easily updated. Let's say I change my custom web resolver, or I remove this resolver as well. So let's make a remove script out of it. Let's say remove resolver. Whoops. Typo. And go. Now I select refresh here. And you see the X after the feature is done. So you can quickly see how the resolvers modify the view of QFTest of your application. And then I skip the second because this is now a little bit special. The engine-specific information here is different from each component to the other. So here, for example, you have a tag specified, you have the text specified, you have the ID. This is like literally the ID you have on the DOM node in the web application. You have the attributes from the web application, like this is the same information you get from the DevTools. And here as well, you have, because it's a mapped element, the information where the mapping from this link comes to. So why is this element, exactly this element, a link? And it says we are internal default resolver a link which means that it has an A tag, and internally in QFTest, it is specified that an A tag always is mapped to a link. But if we select another item here, for example, you see the information has changed. It says this has no ID, so the ID entry is gone, but it has a mapping from generic classes via item, tab panel item is mapped to a CSS class of tab item. So let's see, that means there is a CustomWebResolver currently installed which does this mapping. Go to the application here where it was started, just navigate there. And here we have install CustomWebResolver. And it says generic classes. So I look at the generic classes category of the CustomWebResolver description. And in this, it has exactly the tab panel item via tab item CSS class here. So it says tab panel item. So it refers to this line. So you can easily use the UI inspector to debug your CustomWebResolver. And if I just update that one with a new, very, very sophisticated CustomWebResolver like this one. So it says I will uninstall one, we install a new one. Let's refresh. Let's see if it had any impact. And yes, it had a lot of impact. All the information is gone, let's say. So all the information which was before specified in the generic class category of the CustomWebResolver is gone. We just have here simple mapping of LIE and UL and whatever it is. So UL for an unsorted list, but we don't have this. This is a real list component information anymore, which is important to QFTest for providing additional information and additional interaction with the element. What we still see is that there are some elements black and some elements blue in the tree. This is an encoding for how interesting the element is for QFTest. So the blue ones are those which are interesting. So if you record, for example, that element, let's say this link here or the vehicles tab, I say I record that for a second. So I select that, select recording, stop it. And now I have this new element recorded here. It's a little bit confusing because it already had it, had the parent of it. So maybe I redo this just for cleaner view. So I say record, stop the recording. Here I have a new entry and I see it, all the diffs which are written in black and the UI inspector have been skipped. And just the UL element here is directly beneath the body element in the tree. This comes because my CustomWebResolver definition said, please ignore all div and span tags if they are not further interesting. If I remove that, for example, just run it again to activate it and then refresh, I will have all the diffs here in blue. So QFTest now thinks everything is important. And if I re-record the component, you will see that the structure is much more complex by now. So it's a good idea to have the information here as well, always inside the CustomWebResolver. By the way, not all divs are removed from the recording, but only those which are not further mapped by another mapping to a generic class name. So if you map, for example, a div with a specific ID to a generic class name, let's say, let's find one. For example, that one, it has no ID, so it's kind of difficult to do. We could use the style information, but that's not of fun. Let's say here, this is this vehicle table, and I want to have it. So I can say, let's go here. We map a generic class, maybe by ID. So let's say map generic class, new entry for the generic classes. And I say I want to put this to whatever checkbox, or we say as first attribute, we say this one should be the ID, and the attribute value is that one. And then your generic class is a great class name for that. So let's run it, update, and now you see all the diffs have gone black again because they are ignored by the ignore tags category, except for this one, which is now your generic class. So this is a great way to debug your custom web resolver development. And as well, you see here that the mapping is again specified in the custom web resolver. So it's easy also to come back from the output here in the UI inspector to your custom web resolver. So this is a small example. Let's dive a little bit more into how to define custom web resolver. Let's say we start again with our empty custom web resolver. You see that. And now we want to specify some information here about this one, the table. Let's see. I already explained the easiest way to select an element in the tree is by clicking on this one, and I see, oh, that's already a nice table. It has table tag, and it has tr tag, and it has a td tag. Maybe it's the easiest way to just map those. By the way, if I'm just worried, why isn't there the component I'm looking for? See this show invisible components button here. If you click it, you see a lot of elements in gray. You can't see what these elements are because they're not visible. But here it says something class panel. So the application has more dialogues to show, but those dialogues normally are hidden. When I refresh my application, you see this dialog is now black and not gray anymore, so it's visible. I close it and I refresh the tree view here. It's gone again. So normally you don't need those information, but sometimes it's interesting to see which hidden elements are still there and of which elements QFTest is aware that they're hidden. Especially if you design a visibility resolver, then it's good to see the output of your visibility resolver with this option here. So let's get back to the dialog. It says now the component is not longer available here because I closed the dialog and cannot show the information anymore. Let's go back to those. I said I want to map these tr, td table stuff to a simple table. So let's say I want to design a table. First I say the table, and the table is consistent of a table. And as well, I need in this table a table row. Table row is always a tr. And I also want a table cell. And a table cell is always a td. So this is very conform to the way HTML defines tables. So let's run that. Let's update. And here you go. We have a table. Why do we need that? By the way, of course, you know, without those, so just remove them for a second. If they are gone, and I record, let's say I record a click on a table element here. QFTest is doing fine recording the click here. But if I inspect now the element, it says, well, you have to click on this TD element, which is in a TR, which is in a table, which is in a body, which is in a HTML, and so on. What you don't see here is the nice way of addressing QFTest uses normally. For example, say, in this vehicle table, I want to select the first column and then the first element, or let's change this, for example, into a text note to see whether it's really voyage written there in it. And normally your test should look like that, but unfortunately that doesn't work with the custom web resolver specification because QFTest doesn't know how to handle this in a table way. So let's stop that. Go back to our custom web resolver. Luckily, I still have that in my clipboard. So let's get back to that. let's see in the UI view how we do. It says, oh, the component is gone. And now we have those table rows. Let's see where it works now. Oh, it says there is an error in it, but it doesn't say it doesn't find the component. So let's see what the error is. And it says it got model instead of voyage. Oh, why that? Because we haven't specified any headers. And by the way, it would have been wrong anyway, because I said here, look at the first. So 0 is the first element. So this is like the first table line here, which is the model. So I want to have specify the third one. And computer scientists always count from 0, so it's number 2. And here you go. Check is running fine. Everything is great. So let's continue with that. Let's say we want to record, let's say a check if this button here really says -5% and not says -10%, because that would have been too expensive if I get a deduction of 5%. So here you go. It says -5%, but hey, what's that? That's really weird. It says not the reduction button, but it says something like the calculator panel and then some unnamed column and then some element in it, and then click the button inside this. Let's double click to see where the component comes from. Hey, it says that's a table. I don't see a table here. It's just some nicely arranged elements. Let's use the inspector to see why that's like that. So, inspect that one. And it really says there are table cells here. Oh my god. Yeah, because maybe this application is a little bit older and the designers didn't know that there are now modern ways of CSS to place things like here in the table and aligned. But they used this old table and TR and TD stuff to format it. So that's not a nice way to do it, but I have to handle it. And I cannot use a table here because I want to address a button only and here maybe an element with a label and not a table. So I have to find something more intelligent than my CVR definition here. Let's use the inspector to find something more intelligent. So go here, click on that. Now I look at the details and not just on the top. It says there is some CSS class data cell defined. Oh, let's use that. So data cell, label is data cell. What about the row? Oh, we have some data row. Let's do that. And I bet for the table it's the same, isn't it? Yeah, it's data table. So can we have data table? Let's rerun that. Again, refresh in the UI inspector. We still have the table defined here on the top, but the special table mapping here is gone on the bottom. I also can say I'm not really interested in those table stuff in the middle, so I add this here. Sorry, TD. I rerun that, and here it says the button is inside those black elements. So let's re-record the check here. So I select recording and a check. Click on the button. Stop my recording. Get a new one. And now it's called discount button. By the way, discount button too, because they found another discount button recording with another mapping before here with the HTMLX. But anyway, that's like I wanted to have it. And the button is directly inside my HTML body, which is also nice. So great. Let's see whether this still works here with the panel definition. Oh, it doesn't work anymore. Why that? Let's see there. And it says it is Voyage Hybrid and not Voyage anymore. Now, why that? Now it's the third, but we've counted 1, 2, 3. So 0, 1, 2. Still 0, 1, 2. Let's look at the model there. It's not a data cell, but a header cell. So QFTest already knew that it's not part of the rows anymore. And here you see the mapping is not table row, but it's TD. But, well, anyway, or it's not table cell. header cell is also great. So I can add this to my custom web resolver. I say here, oh, I now know more of my table. I know what the table header cell is. It's that one. And I'm sure there is a definition on the table header row as well. So, oh no, let's just simply look there. And yeah, it's named header row. Good name. Add that here, table header. We add it here. I run that, I refresh. I have the current, the mapping here. That's looking fine. Just change now the counting to 1 because in fact it's the second line. So now it's running great again. But well, now I know that I've defined some headers, so I should be able to edit the column by name as well. Oh, and it works. Great. So this is a way how to use the UI inspector for example, defining a custom web resolver on the web. But that's nice, you say, for web, but what about other systems I have? What about my Android application? Android application is also something where hierarchy is very important. And yes, the Android with Android tests, the UI inspector is also available. By the way, it was the first one, the first test engine which supported the UI inspector. So it's all coming from the Android support in QF-test. It's available since version 6.0. And for the web inspector and as well for Windows applications, which unfortunately I cannot demonstrate on my system because I cannot run a Windows application on my Mac OS system. But believe me, it also works for Windows applications since 7. So QF-test 7.0. With the QF-test 7.1 application, we had another addition to it. So let's stop what I have here and go to our example suite. So since QF-test 7.1, it is also possible to use the UI inspector with your Java application. So if you have a Java Swing application, like that one, oh, it's looking pretty neat, like it's already some couple of decades old. Anyway, still works, and it's an important application for me because I sell my cars with that. So using the UI inspector works the same way as before. You could select clients, show Swing UI inspector. We could select check components and show an inspector. And then this inspector opens and we have a view on this application. And this you can't do with a DevTools inspector because there is no node here, so no DOM node, and there is no DevTools inspector embedded in this application where you can just press Command-Shift-I and open it. No, you need this QF-test web inspector to really see, without recording the component, what the hierarchical structure is like. Here now you see, instead of tag names, you see the class names of the Java Swing classes. You also see, as before, information which generic classes are mapped to using the resolvers. You see here the features, the extra features, the name, etc. And in the engine-specific part, you have here information about a tooltip. You have information about accessible role information when it is available in your system. And more important, you have all the client properties, which are defined on the component. Often you use, for example, client properties to in your resolver to define an extra feature or to define the feature information. And here you can interactively debug them when designing your resolver. And when I'm talking about Java applications, I have also to talk about JavaFX. JavaFX is looking pretty nice. So let's see that again. I start that. And this, by the way, you can't try at home at the moment. It's a feature we are shipping this week with 7.1.3 that you also can use the same technology you are used to now with JavaFX. So here you have the JavaFX information working the same way, same colors like you already used from your web tests. here you have also, for example, the accessible role. So you see, okay, someone using screen readers sees this as a tab item. You have the client properties. You have the ID, which was specified, for example, in the application or in the scene designer, or however the JavaFX application was designed. You can also go, for example, here to more detailed information. Here, let's say I want to have a look on the address here. This is a nice address. And I want to see that the address is totally correct. So let's say I create a new file, a new step. Let's insert a check note. Let's say check text. And for the component ID, I can use the information from Smart ID. Let's keep it like that for the second. And here I have, as I said, the Smart ID information, which I can select and copy, or just press this little copy button here. And I go back to my test. I say, this is the address, and it should be nice street, for example. Let's see where that works. Nice street, check text, and fine. It says everything's green, finished, no errors. But I really don't like this one. Should be like that, would be enough. I don't know why it's writing something like a number under that. So let's run it. Oh, it didn't work. Let's see why. It says it finds the component, but then it says I expect nice street, but it got nothing. Maybe JavaFX is defective. Let's have a look at the application. Let's use, let's see what component this is. So I click at it. Some of you might have already seen it, like highlight component. And in fact, it highlights that address over here. Oh, maybe because all the components are named the same. That's not nice. Now I also understand that this means it's not the first one matching, but again, counting with 0, it's not the zeroth, but in fact, here it's the third one. But I don't like that. I want to specify this in a way, but JavaFX has a nice way to say, let's take this only in the scope, for example, of that panel. So I can write something like, I put this in a sequence. So pack notes in sequence. Here you go. And I can write, for example, at scope here. And now I have to reference that element, which is around my address. I again use my inspector. I say, let's select that element. This is the scope I need. So I copy my Smart ID proposal here. I enter the scope. And I run it again. And it's fine. It says finish, no errors. Working again. Just double check. Add a number to it. And here you go. I should get the error. You can look in the run log, and it says it was expecting nice street 23, but in fact it was just nice street. So that's running all fine. I can also, when I don't like this default name equals address here, but I want to use another feature, I can see what features I have at hand. Let's use that one and scroll to the extra features. And all of those are available in Smart IDs. So for example, if I want to reference always the element which is underneath the element where the homepage address is, I can select, let's use the label top left element for reference here. And now there I have to write homepage. And I move 23. And fine. That's it. Like this, it's nicely working. I can also see, again, if my application is accessible because I have the accessible role, etc. here. So this is about the UI inspector. If JavaFX will release in future more engines, for example, for other mobile platforms than just Android, you can be assured that the UI inspector is available from the beginning on. So you can easily work with that to define your resolvers, to inspect your applications, and to improve the efficiency of your tests. So that's what I wanted to tell you about today. I think it's a really, really great feature. I say thank you to all my colleagues which have developed it, because it helps me in my daily work with testing QF-Test itself a lot. And I hope it also will be helping you like it's done for me in the future. So thanks again for joining me today. If you have any questions, just feel free to write them down. I will try to answer them as far as I can. If they're more complex as well, just feel free to write at support@qfs.de and get an answer quickly by email. Thank you very much.